Welcome everyone to another episode with Clinch Valley CrossFit. We are so happy to have Miss Kaitlyn Cupples here. Kaitlyn, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
We're going to dive right in today. Kaitlyn is part of our nutritional series that we're bringing forward, again, just trying to bring value to our community inside the gym and outside the gym as well, as we share this as free content across several different platforms. But let's go ahead and get right in.
Yeah.
Kaitlyn, just tell us a little bit about where you're from and a little bit of your background.
Okay. So my name's Kaitlyn, like he said. My background in nutrition is I went to Carson-Newman. I played basketball there. My undergrad is in it's science of nutrition is the term. And then I'm currently in my master's program in clinical nutrition at ETSU. I've already completed the master's work and I'm in my internship now. So in May, I will become a registered dietitian nutritionist and with my master's. So.
If you're ready, we're going to hop right into some of the questions.
Sure, let's go. Yeah.
So a big question that we get from either new members or folks just generally in the space, if I'm going to start somewhere on my nutrition, maybe I've not eaten well for a long time. When you have people approach you with that, where do you generally get them started at? Maybe those first steps.
Okay, yeah. It can be daunting, first of all. When people think about cleaning up their diet, they think they're going to have to do all these different changes and make all these expensive changes usually. They're not going to like what they have to eat, and that's just simply not the case. And so if I'm telling someone that's kind of just starting off in their health journey, I kind of just make them think of it as sticking to the foods that God put on this earth. Yeah. So the things that you can get from the ground or from an animal or things like that, those are the natural sources. Those are the things I tell people to kind of gear towards. So a good rule of thumb is just, if you're in a grocery store, really trying to stay on the outer edges of the grocery store is a really good rule. That's mostly where you're going to find your fruits and your vegetables, your meats, your dairy, those kind of things. And yeah, so on your plate, if you're looking at a plate, I would say you always kind of want some protein source, some fat source, and some carb source. That can look in a lot of different ways. There's not a magical food that you need or anything like that. But making sure that you're having those three components at every meal in their proper portions is really just a good rule of thumb. So you can check protein, check carb, check fat, and then also just getting in enough water. I think that's a really big thing people just are resentful of, and just they don't really think about it until the end of the day, and they're like, I haven't even drank water today. That's something that's habitual to me now, but it definitely didn't start that way. So just kind of starting in that, and whether that's flavored water you need to start it, whether that's carbonated water, it really does just help the body. I mean, we're made of mostly water. So when we're giving ourselves water, our body can function properly, can digest things properly, we can think more clearly. So I just always water. So and if you're drinking a lot of sodas or sugary beverages, just switching from that to water is going to do amazing things for your health. So I would just say water, protein, carbs, and fat, and just sticking to natural whole foods are just as simple as you can get, kind of thing.
I love the grocery store reference. We use that a lot, and then the macronutrient approach is very popular and understanding like those good ones. So I love how you put that at the beginning. Like things that are natural, God-made foods are a good way to teach that.
Yeah, and if you can tell if you can tell this is an apple and it came right from an apple tree, that's kind of like the reference. When it gets processed into like an apple juice, then we run into more of the unhealthier characteristics of food. So I like telling people that.
Love that. And that goes I think really well into this next question, which is it seems as if we see more allergies and things like that are coming up. Any thoughts specifically on food allergies and like some of the other processed stuff, what that might be doing? Yeah, so it's a fascinating kind of, I almost would say, epidemic we're dealing with now, just these allergies and intolerances, but the science is still really developing.
and the research is still pretty new on the causes of this, whether it's an environmental factor of like pollution or air quality, water quality, the environments we're born into, just different things. They can all kind of play into it. But from a food standpoint, first, and when you said in kids, one big thing I've learned so much about is breastfeeding. So for moms, if that's something that you can do, there's so much research showing that the amount of, not only like cognitive performance, but allergies and immune system buildup. From just breastfeeding alone, there's a lot of benefits showing that babies have lower risk of allergies, lower risk of getting sick. There's just a lot of proponents there. So that's kind of, from the very beginning, you can start preventing from
That's really,
that.
really cool. And Lisa and I, with Harrison and Ellie, have been able to and obviously Lisa's been able to do that almost a year or a little over a year with Harrison and with Ellie now. And I think it is making a huge difference with them.
Yeah.
It seems like, and again, maybe not so much towards the allergies, but they seem to handle those foods a little better. And when we're trying new things, it seems like they like just about everything.
Yeah, and that's another thing. So trying foods early, trying to breastfeeding, sure, at least 6 months is recommendation. If you can go a year and a half, that's awesome. But at about 6 to 8 months, starting to introduce, natural foods. But just kind of the earlier you get those foods in, the more your baby's body can kind of adjust to those and digest them well. And because the longer you go without food, the more your body's going to build up an intolerance or an issue to them.
Cool.
And I would say gluten and lactose, gluten allergies, gluten sensitivities, lactose intolerances, those are kind of the things I see the most of that are kind of popping up. And just to speak to the gluten part first, there's a lot of people that are switching to gluten-free just because they think it's healthier. And if you are not a celiac, which is your body does just not have the enzymes to digest gluten, or you don't have a doctor, like a medical diagnosis of a gluten allergy or sensitivity or wheat allergy, I really don't think there's any reason to avoid it. So the reason a lot of people are showing success with gluten related, like gluten-free, healthier lifestyles is mainly because when you cut out gluten, if you do it the right way, they're cutting out a lot of processed foods and they're just eating more naturally anyway. So it's not necessarily the gluten that's making, or the lack of gluten that's making them healthier. It's more of them just incorporating healthier things into their diet. But I don't want to demonize gluten. And just for people who don't know, gluten is in wheat, barley, and rye, those sources. And gluten is just the protein that's in those wheat sources. So it's the structural protein that kind of holds, it's the glue per se of those foods. So it's nothing scary. It's not like this random thing that just is in foods that we should be afraid of. Actually, it's part of a lot of whole grains and some good healthy foods. So if you aren't ready to give up gluten, I would say stick to the whole grain sources. It's the processed, the really refined carbohydrate sources that are generally unhealthy anyway, that are giving people the most issues. So if we're sticking to our whole grain, actually whole grain breads, not just on the label that they say it, those good whole grain sources, I think people will have a lot less issues with that. So just to clear up that myth. And gluten, the more we've seen people cut out gluten in their diets and be afraid of gluten, who aren't allergic or have celiac disease, there's more risk of heart disease because we're not getting that fiber in the whole grains. There's a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, just a lot of things. So gluten's not the enemy. And just lastly on that, gluten-free products are huge right now. So gluten-free cookies and pretzels and those things, which are just the processed gluten foods that we want to avoid, just turned into gluten-free ones. So they're still unhealthy. Most of them are actually higher in sugar, higher in fat. They just where the gluten's missing, they plug in other unhealthy things. So if you're going gluten-free for health reasons, maybe instead of just saying gluten-free, maybe just sticking to more of a whole foods diet. Still incorporating those whole grains, maybe just cutting out some of the refined grains. So, and then with lactose, again, I don't think lactose avoiding dairy is necessarily right for everyone, unless your doctor has specifically told you that that's something, or your dietitian is something that you need to avoid. It's just about just keeping it in moderation, and those kind of things. So those are the big two. I don't know specifically the ones you're talking about, but those are the ones that I see a lot.
And you almost have me thinking, this may be for a different podcast too, Kaitlyn, but
yeah.
It's amazing, especially coming from, more from a retail and marketing world to before, is that marketing food sometimes with like the gluten and other things has been pretty interesting to kind of dig into, like to market those things as healthy just because they don't have gluten. I think is an interesting thing to look at, is where you really have to pay attention to labels and things when you're going to see foods. It's good that it doesn't have gluten, but what else is there?
Right, and making sure, and making sure you're just looking at your labels, and it kind of goes into the whole sticking to the perimeter of the store. Like, I'll use the apple again. Like, you don't have to look at the ingredient label of an apple because it's an apple, so that that's what you're getting. So, just being mindful. If you can't read something on an ingredient list, you might want to stay away from it.
Yeah, Tristan went through. He's been going through our nutritional classes. Is also like, when's the last time you saw a commercial on broccoli? Or a commercial on Apple or something like that. So it's like the marketing piece of that. It's very interesting what they're allowed to do to be able to market to folks. But also, I think with the gluten piece, we've seen a lot of people self-diagnose gluten. Like they see something show up and like it's like it must be gluten. And then to your point, I started eating healthier, so it must have been the gluten.
Right. Yep. And that's just, and I do, that's my big push is, unless you have been tested, don't cut out gluten. Gluten has a lot of good benefits. Whole grains are really good for you. They're really satiating foods. They're good carbohydrate sources. So, don't knock it completely. Just maybe eat a little less of those processed foods.
Cool. Awesome. So to go into the next piece here, we're looking at someone that's maybe just starting that journey again and trying to eat well, and maybe not an athlete. You've been a competitive athlete for some time, and like those things. Is there a difference, like performance-based nutrition versus someone that's just trying to eat healthy?
I would definitely say yes. I would say that when you are performance-based, you're training a lot more. So your caloric energy needs are going to be a little higher than someone who's sedentary. So if you are working out 30 minutes, hour and a half a day, whatever, or if you have a really active job, like, I don't know, a mailman or a factory worker or something like that. Yeah, construction. Your caloric needs are going to be higher. So 2,000, or a 40-year-old who, is sitting all day versus a 40-year-old who is working out an hour and a half a day, their caloric needs are going to be a little different. So just realizing that you need to fuel your body for whatever sport you're in is a big difference. I think generally both of them need to stick to that same whole foods kind of mentality. But performance specifically, your water needs are going to be a little higher as well, because you are sweating a lot of that out. And then I think post-workout recovery kind of is kind of the big difference. I would say is like where they kind of split. So after workouts, or people who are working out who are trying to get stronger, whatever your strength or quickness, whatever your goal is, most people want to build muscle. Most people want to lean out. Those are mostly the goals I see, and just get stronger. So there are a few things post-recovery that I think would be beneficial. I will say a lot of people are just the marketing piece again, supplements. Right. It's a big market right now. And just there's network marketing companies, there's supplement stores. So it can be confusing and super daunting. But again, I'll just preach the same message of whole foods first. There is totally a place for some supplements, and supplements are to supplement a good diet already. So I don't think that you need, if you're drinking more than 1 or 2 shakes of anything, protein shakes, whatever, a day, I don't think that's necessarily the best thing you could be doing. Our bodies definitely digest whole foods better, but that to say, like, there are a few supplements that I think can be beneficial to someone who is performance-based focused. So protein powder or protein bars, some of those, again, there are some brands that are better than others, but I will say that protein powder, you can bring it in a shaker bottle, you can mix it with water or milk and have it on the go. So, and when you necessarily can't have a grilled chicken breast, So you're getting that protein that you need post-workout to prevent that muscle breakdown, to help your body's ability to build new muscle. Those are really important things. So making sure we have some protein source after our workouts. If you work out in the morning and you can eat breakfast after, awesome. Make sure that's a little higher in protein. Whatever meal is after your workout, that should be a little higher in protein. And in general, if you are performance-based, a higher protein diet is probably going to be beneficial, just for the sake of your muscles breaking down and building that strength. So that's one thing. The other thing with that is that if you can have that protein source within 30 minutes to an hour post-recovery, that's optimal. Just again to prevent that extra breakdown, because after an hour and a half to 2 hours, you're really not getting the same benefits that you would from that extra protein source. Another protein or another supplement source that could be beneficial, or just a post-recovery tip, is glucose. So glucose is your carbohydrate sources. So your body runs mainly on glucose. That's your body's energy. Like that's what gets things going. So if you're working out 30 minutes or more, you're kind of depleting your body of those glycogen stores, which in order to recover, in order to, just perform optimally, you need to replenish those. So making sure that post-recovery meal not only has protein, but there's some carbohydrate sources in that. So if you're on the go, maybe a protein shake and an apple, or Greek yogurt. I love Greek yogurt. It has some carbohydrates in it, but also has a lot of protein. So that's just a whole foods kind of source. But if you can't get something like that, they do make higher glucose carbohydrate source post-recovery shakes and meal bars and things like that. And there's 2 other kind of supplements that I would say could be beneficial to your diet. Well, this is separate, but a multivitamin. I think multivitamins are key. They just fill in those gaps that you may not get from your diet. So making sure you have a good quality multivitamin. And then there's BCAAs, so branched chain amino acids, and you see that as a supplement a lot, but you can also find that in some eggs, meat, and dairy sources as well. So it doesn't just have to be the powder that you mix in with things. So if you can get eggs, some dairy, and meat after your workout, if that's possible, those can kind of help. But those branched chain amino acids help a lot in preventing soreness in your muscles. They really help build up the muscles that you are looking for, that you do want. So that's kind of that marketing thing. And then there's one other thing. I did a stint. I worked 2 summers at UT with their sports dietitian during football camp. And one thing that she had them do is drink tart cherry juice or blueberry juice. It was really interesting, but those can really help decrease any inflammation in the body that you may have post-workout, because you're working hard. Those muscles are breaking down, so there's going to be some inflammation in there. So that it has a really high antioxidant content, so anything that can decrease inflammation. So those are a little extra. You don't have to do those, but those are just some little fun facts. Other than that, I really just don't see a huge need to buy a $40 supplement. As much as they're marketed, as much as you see the commercials, it really is just that. It's a marketing thing. Yeah. So if you can see a justification in that, sure. One thing, pre-workout is a big, pre-workout supplements are a big thing. Are they nice to have? Sure. But again, if that ingredient list is really long, if we don't really know what's going in that, if it's more, if it's a laundry list, like, probably not going to be the best sources. So there's some natural energy sources, like a quick piece of fruit or something that has some sugar in it to get your glucose levels a little higher. That's great. I'm not a big pre-workout person, but I know a lot of people are. So maybe just having more natural sources of caffeine or anything like that are probably better than those supplements you find in the store.
Yeah, and the supplements. Well, I think if someone was just starting today too, and what we would probably tell them, and you may have a similar thought, is that if you're coming in and let's just say, let's say that you're 30 to 40% body fat, and like you're coming in, you're just starting your nutrition,
sure,
and like those things you're really just getting going. Like we would probably tell that person, let's get the nutrition right. And once we see most in CrossFit anyways, once that person gets down to between, for a male 10 to 15% or for a female 15 to 20% body fat, somewhere in that range, it's like that's where we'll start talking a little bit about supplementation or, really dialing in any kind of extras beyond that point.
Yes.
But, it's easy to go straight to the the pre-workouts, the post-workouts, the zillions of proteins powders, which are great things put in the right place, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, that's really, really cool.
I totally agree. And I will say, like mostly at UT with their sports dietitian, they really stick to whole foods mostly. That's awesome. So the professionals stick to the whole foods thing, and I know they're not eating a natural whole foods diet isn't as flashy as some of these supplements are, but I totally agree. First, get that diet right, get those healthy foods in you, and it's amazing the change you'll just see from that. So there's no magic pill, there's no magic anything like that. And if you are, make sure they're safe supplements. So as a NCAA athlete, like there's a lot of guidelines for anything we could use, but I think those guidelines are pretty good for the population. So if they're not good enough for an athlete, they're probably not good enough for like the average person either. The FDA doesn't have a lot of regulation on supplements. Supplements can kind of say, unlike food, they can kind of say whatever they want. They can kind of put whatever they want in their stuff, not regulated. So again, that's another proponent of sticking to natural foods. But if you are going to use a supplement or just a vitamin, if you can find one that has a USP certification or label or an NSF label, those have been third-party tested and are safer options. So cool. USP, NSF. So those are the two that they tell NCAA athletes to use. So I think that the regular population should probably stick to that too.
That makes a lot of sense, and that can get really scary. I think just about anyone can start their own supplement company too, and like a lot of the the ingredients that you see, you don't know necessarily where they're coming from either in some instances, right, when you go into some of that. Yeah. But I wanted to say one thing before we transition to the next piece, which was you talked earlier too about the food and eating healthy, and like even like the kind of the stigma of that being way, way more expensive. And we've gone through a couple of things, and Tristan and I are working on a few pieces maybe to show is that literally I just went shopping, just for myself to really see, kind of what that's going to look like, and was able to make 3 meals a day for 5 days for somewhere around $30, and that was all natural foods. That was meats, vegetables, nuts, seeds, fruit, starch, no sugars. But like that piece was really easy, and we're doing meal prep and things like that. I think it's really interesting if you think about that. Really eating for the whole week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you can prep your meals, and like the cost versus just eating out, it's like literally 3 meals. So, and
anything you make at home is going to be healthier than what you get at a restaurant or a fast food place. Again, it's all about the marketing. So what restaurants want to get you coming back, they're going to make their food taste really good. How do they do that? Put a lot of extra fat, a lot of extra sugar, a lot of extra things that you don't necessarily need, and can market it as healthier too. So you're better off eating at home, and food is medicine. It really is. And a big thing that I think of, if my grocery bill is a little higher than someone else's just because I'm getting more healthy food than someone else, would you rather pay more and invest more in your health now through food and memberships to gyms, or pay hospital bills later? Like, it really is. Yeah, it really is like you're going to pay for it sometime. So I'd rather invest in a good, healthy lifestyle now than pay for, a chronic condition or hopefully not something later that you'd have to be hospitalized for that's health related. So when you think about it that way, it is a little easier to swipe that card or pay that extra money to eat a little healthier.
So for this next question, and this is more related, I'm going to read this so I don't hack it up too bad. So just the CrossFit definition of nutrition, and just generally, what are your thoughts on it, and is it lined up generally with what the newest things in nutrition are? Is it still valid? So that definition is: eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. Glassman goes on to talk about that it's not necessarily just about quality or quantity. It can and should be both. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have anything blaringly against any of that. I think those are good general rules of thumb. I'm very much a inclusive kind of dietitian, where I don't think we should ever label foods as good and bad. I just think we need to label foods more as like, these are my primary foods, these are like occasional foods. I really like just an 80-20 rule, 80%, 20% rule of food. And you can play with that depending on your goals. If you're really trying to cut back, 85-15, 90-10, whatever. But leaving that percentage for those fun foods, or those things that you really enjoy that maybe aren't a part of a super healthy lifestyle, but enough to not make you go crazy. Because the more research I've seen, the more you starve people, you deprive people, you tell them, a good example, tell Harrison not to touch the stove. What are they going to do? They want to touch the stove. So if you tell someone they can't have sugar ever again, that's all they're going to think about. And if you don't, more power to you, but majority of us will think that way. Same with fast foods, fried foods, whatever. So leaving some room for that, and food isn't the enemy. Just kind of normalizing foods and making all foods kind of on the same playing field, but knowing in your head logically what's going to set me up for success and what's maybe going to take me away from my goals. So that's kind of my definition on the sugar aspect. So no added sugar would be amazing if none of us had, if we were robots and we didn't have our humanity who wanted and craved sugar sometimes. So, just keeping that in mind. But as far as, sticking to meats, fruits, and vegetables, whole grain sources, I think that's it. Again, with your meats, sticking to more leaner cuts of meats. Red meat, I know, has been demonized in some circles, but there are some really great benefits to red meat. There's a lot of heart healthy things. Just again, making sure, I would say red meat 2 or 3 times a week, sticking to your your eggs, your turkey, your chickens, your fish the rest of the time. So kind of keeping that rule in mind. Vegetables, as much as you want, whenever you want, as long as we're preparing them correctly. So not a lot of butter, not a lot of extra oils, things like that added into it. But vegetables and fruits are your friend. Again, should you have probably more fruits or probably more vegetables than fruits? Yeah, fruits are really palatable. And if you are just getting into the healthy eating, fruits are kind of your segue. I think that's kind of where you get people kind of in the door, and then kind of transitioning into more vegetables and stuff like that. So again, I don't think any food's the enemy, but there's definitely a balance there. And then for the quality and quantity piece, I love that. I'm really, part of what I've learned in the research that I've done a lot into is kind of staying away from a restrictive mindset and kind of intuitively eating. So I like to tell people about the hunger and fullness scale. So if you have a 0 to a 10, if you are eating A 10 is like that Thanksgiving meal, I can't move, full. 0 is like, I'm in a desert, I haven't eaten for 2 days, kind of full, or hungry. And so I like to tell people, don't wait until you are at 1 to eat. Don't deprive yourself all day, because then you're not going to have a lot of control, and you're going to probably overeat and overindulge and just not feel great. So that's kind of the cycle I see people getting in. They restrict, and then they just binge out on food. So kind of not letting your hunger go lower than like a 3. You're hungry, you're thinking about it, it's on your brain, but you're not ravenous. And then kind of not letting yourself get to more than like a 7, 8. 7 ideally, 8 like max fullness. So you can still do your daily life tasks. You're not like uncomfortable full. You're not having to unbutton your pants or anything like that. And that kind of goes into the quantity piece. So I don't think there's those general rules of thumb for protein and fat, those hand deck of cards kind of thing. But if someone really doesn't do well with that kind of structure, or if they're, again, just kind of getting into it and having to like portion out everything, or using a food scale is like really daunting, just kind of like eating mindfully, assessing your fullness level throughout the meal, not eating very distracted. So if you're eating in front of a TV, you're eating a bag of chips, you're going to be a lot less mindful of like how full you are than if you were sitting at the table eating those slowly. So slowing down, realizing how much we're eating, taking a second to check in with ourselves. Okay, where am I? Could I eat more? Could I stop? Kind of those kind of things. That's kind of, I like to keep it very simple for people on the quantity piece. But yeah, for sure, if you are eating in excess, your portions are out of control, you're not going to reach those goals you want to hit, even if you are working out really hard at the gym. Food is kind of like, is the main part of that physique. It's, I forget the percentage, but, what is it, the saying, like abs are, worked in the gym but made in the kitchen, or something like that.
For sure. Sure. And you mentioned something before I forget, is the to eat foods and to be able to assess like how full you are, you need to take time to eat. And that's something that nutrition was talking about in our very first nutritional class for our athletes, where you really have to dedicate some time to eat. If you eat on the go, you're eating driving down the road, some of those things, sometimes it's hard. You can easily whiff out a bunch of food way before you get to assess that scale.
Exactly.
And before you know it, you're that 7, 8, 9 on the scale versus if you take that, what the recommended might be, at least 30 minutes, I would say, or maybe up to an hour to like eat your food. That might make a difference. Yeah,
and in our fast-paced culture, we really have gotten out of the habit of enjoying mealtime, but more than just like a food standpoint, like just from like an emotional standpoint and a family standpoint, you really are. We've gotten away from that sacred time of eating and relating it back to biblical times and Jesus. Like, they had a lot of big things around meals. The Last Supper, like a lot of big moments were around the table, and I don't think we need to get away from that, but I think we're slipping a little bit in our 21st century. So
there's something that happens when you kind of sit and break bread with people. It's good. Even coming out of the business world where we would do that and meet with customers or clients or those things, most of the time we would try to do that around the meal, just to be able to connect, release, but take that time to eat and experience with someone is pretty important. So I love that. I could talk to you all day on those things. So you'll have to say, hey, come on.
You're so fine. You're so fine.
The next piece is, and this is an interesting one for all of us, I think, but you are as fresh as you can be, coming from, some of the newest learnings and everything, coming from where you've been studying and your practice there. Anything like new or intriguing in the nutritional space that's come up recently that you would want to share?
There's so much, and I feel like there's something new every day on TV about like eggs are bad for you, and the next day they're great for you. So there's a lot of research around nutrition and food, and it is so interesting. I think a few of them we've touched on with the gluten thing, just not demonizing it as so much, and there really are a lot of risk factors for not eating gluten that are popping up in research now and papers that I've done, it's been on that. And so that's a big thing. Probiotics are really hot right now in the media and sources like that, and they really are important. The biggest, most fascinating piece that I can think of is our gut, and our immune system is in our gut. And there's so many things that play into a healthy microbiome. Your microbiome is your immune system, your gut, and that's all right there. And that's all, your nutrition plays a huge part in that. And so there's this thing called the gut-brain axis. And so a lot of intolerance and allergies can come from an unhealthy balance in this gut-brain axis, and unhealthy amount of bacteria, and of bad bacteria and good bacteria. So I think that's one of the main things I'm seeing, is that paying attention to your gut microbiome, what you're putting into your body, what you're putting on your body, things like that, just from chemical standpoint and stuff like that. Again, with the intolerances, we're seeing a lot of that come from just having an unhealthy amount of the bad bacteria versus the good bacteria. So again, it's really new science, but there's so many things that play into that gut brain axis, and how we digest foods and things like that, and how your body just digests foods in general has a lot to do with that gut brain axis. So a big thing that can help that is probiotics that we're seeing. But again, just like everything, our marketing and media takes things and they just run with it. So you definitely need some good probiotics and prebiotics in your system. Prebiotics can be more from your food sources. So fiber is a big prebiotic source. You can get that from fruits and vegetables and whole grains. But then also probiotics. So probiotics are live bacteria. Bacteria sounds gross, but we have a lot of bacteria in our bodies. So we have good and bad. So probiotics are those good bacteria that keep our immune system healthy, keep us moving, keep us functioning, keeping us digesting things well. We can find that in Greek yogurt is a source I think is the most familiar to a lot of people. Kombucha, the drink, it's super popular right now, but it is a really good, it's a fermented tea. It has a lot of good bacteria in that, good probiotics. And kimchi, or fermented vegetables, those are kind of another source you can get them from. But then they also supplements, there's tons out there right now. So just be leery of, in this topic, be leery of all of those. Remember those two third-party testing groups that I mentioned, the NSF and USP certified. If you're looking for probiotics, make sure you're getting one that doesn't have one strand of bacteria. There's lots of bacterias in them, like 7 to 11 different strands is usually a good probiotic. And then making sure there's more than 15 million bacteria. That sounds like a lot, but it really isn't.
Not that much.
Yeah, in your supplement. So I think that's one piece, and the other piece is just this intuitive eating thing that's kind of been coming up. Just being more mindful of your food, taking more time around your food, checking in your hunger and fullness levels. No foods are really off limits, just kind of normalizing eating, because people have become very restrictive and rigid, and it's leading to a lot of these binge restrict cycles that we see. So just kind of normalizing food a little bit is the other portion, and how that can play into our relationship with food is as much mental as it is physical. So I think those are the two areas that I'm finding most fascinating right now.
That's really cool. And from the civilian point of view, from our side of that, just looking, we probably would look at probiotics more from the supplementation thing. And I was curious as well, is it seems as if probiotics has been, popularized more to counter maybe some bad dieting or something. And like that's the way it's
like a
being
detox.
used or treated. Yeah. And I think you can even be maybe even some that you could be prescribed to for different things. Like food can cause you, skin issues and all this other kind of stuff, like with just the gut health. But I love this. I love what you were talking about. Some of those other ways to get probiotics into the system, and
their
the
natural
fermented
ways.
vegetables seems to be really hot in the this space too. Like that's a new thing that's coming up. So
Yeah. Just trying to get it from your foods rather than a pill is always going to be your better option. So
cool. Love that. So, as we're nearing the end, and we'll get to more of this, and I hope you can come back too, because I could literally talk to you for another hour. We're probably close to an hour in. But any final thoughts before we kind of transition to the closing that you'd like to share? Any message in and around nutrition or food that you'd like to share with the audience?
I would just say it doesn't have to be as complicated as you make it. And one big thing that has been a part of my life and my story with how I became becoming a dietitian and why I'm interested in it is we can place so much value on our physical health that we kind of forget the other pillars of health. So there's physical health, which is great, which is our food and our exercise. But there's also emotional health. There's spiritual health. There's social health, spiritual, like all those things. Mm-hmm. There's so many pillars of health that if you put physical as the top pillar, you kind of neglect the other ones. But really, health is so holistic, and that's kind of something that I preach. Is that just if you focus on one thing, you're kind of putting the other things to the wayside. And are you really healthy? You can have a 6-pack but have no friends anymore because you refuse to go out to eat with anyone because you're scared of French fries, because you don't want to lose your 6-pack. So are you really healthy? That's kind of something that I've struggled with in my past, and I've been there and I get it. But I mean, a great analogy I like to use, because I do come from the Christian faith, and my background in church, just the body is your temple. The Bible says that people on biblical times went to the temple to worship. They didn't worship the temple, You went inside, and luckily, like, the Lord lives inside of us, so we can kind of use our bodies as a living sacrifice, a living piece of worship. But we're not supposed to worship this body. It's temporary. It's just here for a breath, and the rest is eternity. So we can easily I see a lot of people making their body an idol, making their physical health an idol. And when it's out of balance with the rest of everything, it really just becomes destructive, just like anything we abuse or overuse. So it's so important, and we are supposed to treat our bodies with respect and give them the foods that they need and move them enough during the day. But if that's a goal of yours, just make sure you're keeping your priorities in check. And I know that sounds a little contradictory coming from a dietitian, but it's so true. And when you really you're giving time to your social health, your spiritual health, your physical health, your relational health, all those things, you really are going to be a more healthy person. So I think that's just kind of the overarching method.
Love that message. Love that. And just it gets you thinking about well-rounded health, whatever that's going to be all throughout life, not just here or there. But
exactly.
Absolutely love it. So you are part of some, I would say, organizations or teams, or like anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to, or anything that's going on within those groups that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah. Well, my passion and what I want to go into is eating disorder help and recovery and being a dietitian for that population. So I'm actually the president of a nonprofit called The Place of Healing. It's out of Johnson City, but it's an online resource. Just healingtn.com is the place. And if you know anyone that struggles with a disordered eating pattern, just really unhealthy kind of relationship with food or anything like that, it's a place you can go to find resources to help them, what you can do. There's also a hotline you can call to talk to someone, a dietitian or a counselor who knows a little bit more, a little bit seasoned in that area, that can talk to you about how to help that person, or help you get that person in touch with someone who can help them. Another place I'm actually doing my rotations in my internship right now is called Focus Treatment Centers. There's one in Knoxville, there's one in Chattanooga, and that's a place, again, for eating disorder recovery. If you know someone that needs that, there's a place just locally, luckily, that we can go to. They have counselors and dietitians and doctors that can help that area. So if I was going to give a shout out to anything, it would be that. Just they are so prominent, and unfortunately, it is such a big issue, especially young women now that we see. So just kind of shedding light on that it is an issue, and if you know someone that they can get help.
Yeah, I think it's unique. I think we all know someone that has been through that or that is currently going through that. So we'll make sure to link up all those things and resources for those folks out there, because I think that could definitely help some in need.
Yeah.
The last piece, I want people to be able to get a hold of you and only share what you like, but like we'll tag this up and again in the description here. But how can people get a hold of Kaitlyn?
So I'm mainly on Instagram, like most millennials are. So just at Katie _Cup is my name right now, and then I have a blog also with school. They're not totally frequent on the posts, but it's called acupofkate.com. So those are the two areas that you could probably find a lot about nutrition and just things that I'm doing and liking right now. And if you have any questions, if anyone wants to reach out, I do become a registered dietitian in May, so I can professionally, give advice, help people. If you just want to send a DM, I'd love to help.
That's awesome. Awesome. And we didn't touch on it before, but just a kind of a description, a little bit about your blog and what you're doing with that. Can you give us just a little bit of detail so they'll know what to look for there?
Yeah. So at A Cup of Kate, it's kind of just, I like to just say a cup of me. So a cup of things that I am really passionate about, and it is that holistic health that I was talking about. Just that, health is so much more than food. Health is so much more than exercise. It's so much more than what you look like. I do touch on food and exercise and things like that and healthier ways of eating, but I also just focus on like good coping mechanisms, like things that can relieve stress, how to live just a more holistic kind of life. That's kind of my overarching method, or I guess message. So that's kind of what I want to share. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, I can say this. It's been an absolute blessing to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Can't wait to have you back. We'll try not to invite you every single week just so you have a little bit of a break, but know you've got some big things coming up. Congratulations.
Yes,
and can't wait to see some beautiful pictures of this wedding coming up
here
pretty soon.
June 15th.
So awesome. So congratulations. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.